Hello and welcome to Fritz Leiber and the Green Millenium, with which I have just finished having a marvellous time. This beautiful old Ace edition is one that I've had since I was a teenager. It's travelled around the world and around Australia with me, and it wasn't, even though I've been rereading it for years, it wasn't near the top of my to-read shelf, but thanks to BookTube in all its magnificence, it's got there. So a while ago I was watching a video from a booktuber called Liminal Spaces. He was talking about Fritz Leiber, and he mentioned, not this particular one, he was talking about Midnight in the Mirror World, which I haven't read, but he also mentioned this edition with this spectacular cover, which I rather believe is Frazetta, though there's no evidence of that inside my copy. I just look at the curves on this and the muscles. If not Frazetta, I'm going to say the same school of writing as Frazetta. Anyhow, Liminal Spaces was talking about Leiber, and he also mentioned yet another channel, that's Vintage SF, which I watch often and enjoy. And on this particular edition, I'm going to try and remember to link both of these channels. Richard, Ira and Matt were all having this conversation about Fritz, and after having pronounced his name Leiber for my whole life, I'm told that apparently I'm meant to pronounce it Leiber. But this information comes from an interview with the author, and if the author doesn't know how to pronounce his own name, I really don't know what else we can do. Anyway, due to these wonderful booktubers, this one jumped straight to the top of my to-read list. Now, let's start with Philip Gish. Philip Gish woke up feeling good. Feeling as good as if all his previous life had happened to two other guys, poor miserable chumps. He's not an happy person, he's miserable, he lives alone, but this particular day he wakes up feeling top of the world in his mini apartment and with a strange green cat perched on the edge of his round, futuristic, polarizing window. And from the second you start reading, it sucks you in, and I love every part of the writing style. I guess one of the things that caught my attention this time is how light and humour-filled Leiber's writing is, because I never remember that. When I go to pick up one of his books, the writing style always sort of punches me, strikes me. His writing style always strikes me as being very, very light and humour-filled, but I don't remember his books that way. I remember the books for the content, for the emotional experience. This one I always remember not so much the plot as how much I loved reading it. Now, while I've been reading it for decades, and I always remember, as soon as I see the image, how much I enjoy it, what I don't always remember is the plot and the narrative. One of those things. I don't actually remember everything that happens in the book. I remember many of the characters, but the plot never really stays with me all that much. Only the keen enjoyment. And I think part of that on the reread is that it's so action-packed. It's very much non-stop. It goes all over the place. From the moment we wake up with Philip Gish and we find out about this cat, and there's a sense, Philip has just been fired from his most recent job. He's a lower level worker, white collar worker, I think they call him at some stage in the book. And the jobs that he do are minimal, and he keeps being replaced by robots who can do the job better than he can. He's just lost another job, he should be depressed. And in actual fact, I think he'd taken pills to make him sleep or something, not sure about that one. Wakes up top of the world with this cat that he's never seen before and doesn't know where he came from. But he calls it lucky because he's feeling lucky and it's a wonderful day. And they leave the apartment and they go looking for adventures. And Philip, instead of putting earplugs in and looking at the ground, he looks around at this world, and thus gives us a wonderful chance to see this world that Leiber is making for us. It's strange and futuristic and wonderful, but he draws it with a very light touch. There's a lot of small details that will appeal to the classic sci-fi reader, but he doesn't really dwell on them very much. So a couple of the details are actually the apartment that Philip wakes up in. It's tiny. We don't get the feeling that it's very nice. And we learn that it used to be a luxury hotel, but these round windows were, which polarize and do all this funky stuff, they were a main feature of the place. But in the housing shortage of the 80s, it had been split up to make micro apartments, in which one he lives. Queensland government, take heed. Split up more luxury hotels we don't need to make micro apartments, which we do. Anyway, the way in which Philip's sad life is described is actually very, very fun and, again, full of humour. So we learn that Philip spends a lot of his spare time in his apartment, and we get the image of these hotel blocks that all have a central shaft, and you can look from your window into other round windows, many of which are polarised to be dark, but sometimes they're not. He spends a lot of his time basically as a voyeur, watching other windows, preferably the young women, and he's never had the courage to ever talk to any of them. A couple of these young women later feature in the story, so it isn't just a way of building up Philip, it's a way of building up characters. As well as the fact that this plot is non-stop and has so much in it, it's got masses of characters. This isn't one of those books where you have one character and a few dialogues with other people. No, there's a huge array. Leiber's given us wrestlers from male-female wrestling. You've got crime bosses, you've got syndicate bosses, you've got a weird psychologist, you've got two crazy people who live in an apartment full with cats who end up deciding that Philip's green cat is a reincarnation of Bast. You have got masses of characters and a lot is happening with all of them. Philip himself goes out on this adventure with his new cat Lucky, and he goes into one of these emporiums of wrestling, and along the way we not only meet characters, we see things in this world that are amazing. For example, he ends up going to a psychologist once he's been convinced that the green cat isn't real, and this strange woman with hooves that he sees along the way also isn't real. And the psychologist tries to trap him, but he escapes with the psychologist's daughter, who's called Mitzi. And as Mitzi is climbing through the ceiling of the room in which Philip is imprisoned, we get a glimpse through to this computer. And this computer can link with all the automated libraries of the world. And you know what? We kind of have that, don't we? But and the other one, when he's walking into the wrestling, you've got this automated wall that will speak and send out a rubberized hand to grab you if you're not allowed in. We don't have that. There's places where we need that, but we don't have it. Anyway, all the way along, this is a huge amount of fun. I don't think in any way it strives for realism. It strives for an enjoyable story. I think Philip sleeps once in the whole 48 hours, but in terms of fun, enjoyable writing, this has got to be one of the top ones this year that I've reread in this case, and which always satisfies. And I'll probably be able to read it again in another couple of years. I'll probably have forgotten all the manifestations of running around all over the place. Even though I kind of remembered them as I was reading them, it still rereads very, very well. So, terrific fun. The happy ending as man gets girl, man gets cat, actually, only it isn't a cat. And yes, there's a space invasion in there, and there's a flying saucer, and there's all this wonderful, fun, classic sci-fi stuff to delight the reader and make them happy in their reading experience. I don't think I really want to say too much about the details. I don't want to spoiler this story for you. And I'm pretty much the only place you're going to get spoilers, because it doesn't look to me like many people are talking about it online, and the Goodreads description of it is basically the one on the back of the book, which says nothing of any relevance to how much we're going to enjoy this book. Okay, so thank you, Vintage SF, for telling me how to pronounce this author. Thank you, Liminal Spaces, for reminding me of this book. And I hope you enjoy your reading of it too. And thank you all for watching and listening to me rave on about yet another classic SF book. I'm going to go on to another one, and I hope it's even a quarter of as much fun as this one. And if you like your classic SF, and you can get a copy of it, I thoroughly do recommend The Green Millenium by Fritz Leiber. It's going to be hard calling him Leiber after all those years. Can you say Leiber? No? Can you say I am a dinosaur? Not going to. See ya. Have a great day and read good books. Read classic science fiction. Many of them are good books.